Back now to our top story today, as some Americans go before Congress to tell lawmakers firsthand how the IRS targeted them. Some Democrats on the House Ways and Means Committee appeared to go after the witnesses, suggesting they asked for the treatment they got. Listen here.
Each of your groups is highly political, from opposing the president's health care reform to abortion restrictions to gay marriage. You are all entrenched in some of the most controversial political issues in the country. And with your applications, you are asking the American public to pay for that work. Many of you host and endorse candidates. The line between permitted political activities and non-permitted political activity can be very fine. And it's important that the taxpayers know which side you fall on. It's clearly wrong. It was inept, stupid, and a whole lot of other things. But let's not get lost. During the Bush administration, liberal groups were targeted without any concern by Mr. Issa or anyone else on this committee. The Republicans were looking for a conspiracy where there isn't one. I haven't heard a single word here about what questions you think we ought to be able to ask you about your tax-exempt requests. Anything else, like the circus that's happening in the Oversight Committee or here, is simply political theater.
Welcome to Washington.
The committee will be in order. Ryan has the time.
We heard Gingrich, we heard Bush.
Mr. Chairman.
We had the former IRS Commissioner Schulman, who knew about the political targeting long before Congress was told, since implied that the organizations were responsible for the targeting because they chose to apply for tax-exempt status. So you're to blame, I guess, is the message here.
Wow. Joining me now, Leslie Marshall, syndicated radio talk show host and a Fox News contributor, and Chris Plante, host of the Chris Plante Show. I say again, wow. I mean, what an exchange. And you heard McDermott objecting when Paul Ryan responded on the fly to what he had. He went right after McDermott in terms of sequence. And you heard him objecting to Paul Ryan trying to challenge what he had said. But that was an extraordinary exchange, Chris.
Yeah, Congressman McDermott, unencumbered by any quaint, old-fashioned notions of decency, honesty, and integrity, decided to attack the people that have been targeted for their political beliefs by the most vicious arm of the federal government, the IRS. They've been held up for years by the IRS, and he misrepresented. I don't want to, you know, it's not in vogue to call people liars in Washington, D.C., even when that's obviously what they're doing. The IRS did not target liberal groups during the Bush administration, and Congressman Issa was not the chairman of the Government Oversight Committee at the time. He also went on to make this phony, specious claim that the head of the IRS was appointed by Bush. Therefore, he must be a Republican. Also not true. Contributor to Democrat DNC and beyond. The congressman's dishonesty was outdone only by his shamelessness, his lack of integrity, and the vulgarity of the defenses that we're seeing launched these days are really beyond anything I've seen in my 25 years of watching Washington very closely, which I've been doing from D.C. It's worse than I've ever seen it, and that's a pretty good example of everything that is despicable and disgusting about this city.
Leslie, I watched those witnesses testify one after the other. You know, the woman from Iowa and you know, the woman who almost broke down in tears and said, look, I'm not a Republican and I'm not a Democrat, I'm just an American. I knew this was wrong when it was. And the one guy talking about how they were seeking records with respect to children that he meant to teach and so on. And this is the response? I mean, does Congressman McDermott think this is going to help him?
Well, I think he's looking for a political favor with what he said. I think he's frustrated, and I do think some of what he said is right. Yes, I hear you, but I do think he's frustrated because I think he is saying what many people are saying, and some on the right are saying as well. We have 4 investigations. If you want a special prosecutor, fine. This was horrendous. Was it illegal? These groups definitely were targeted. They definitely were targeted because of their political ideology, and that was wrong. But, Chris, I need to correct you. In 2004, 2-year investigation into the NAACP for having an ad that ran against President then-sitting George W. Bush. 2005, the All Saints Episcopal Church, where I live in Pasadena, they were going to have their tax-exempt status revoked because there was a sermon about an anti-Iraqi war.
But wait, because I want to tell the viewers, because I had the former IRS commissioner on this program on Friday, and I asked him about what prior alleged allegations of targeting. And O'Reilly spoke with him the night before and asked him more specifically. And he said, yes, there were some instances in which we reviewed the tax-exempt status of a couple of groups that we felt had been behaving overtly politically.
Right.
But never on the front end, this wide swath, you got Tea Party in your name, you're going over to Determinations Unit, and Lois and her friends are going to spend 3 years preventing you from getting that status in the first place. Chris.
I mean, obviously the difference couldn't be more stark. It's the difference between bringing people who are suspects in a murder case in versus just rounding up the neighborhood by virtue of the fact that they're geographically convenient. I'm all in favor of taking a look at the political activities of tax-exempt organizations. That's perfectly legitimate. That's not what happened here. And to obfuscate and to pretend that it's anything other than what it is, you first admitted, Leslie, that it is what it is, and then you attempted to obfuscate by bringing up 2 cases. Sure, you should look at tax-exempt status of organizations like this. Look, Congressman McDermott went way around the bend here. This is Baghdad Jim. He's got a long and storied history in Washington, D.C. He's one of 3 Democrats that accepted a trip to Baghdad on the lead-up to the Iraq invasion that was funded, as it turned out, by Saddam Hussein's intelligence services. This is not a man who's steeped in integrity and honesty. And look, attempting to lay down cover smoke like that is offensive and repugnant. And we should just get to the facts.
And I want to tell our viewers that I'm already getting emails from other viewers, one of whom said he just tried to call Congressman McDermott's office to find out why he said this. He claims that the D.C. staffer answering the phone hung up on me 3 times. He then points out, I'm a taxpayer. I pay that guy's salary, and I pay for that phone that guy just hung up on me. I want to ask you this, Leslie. The last point by Congressman McDermott. I haven't heard a single word here about what questions you think we ought to be able to ask you about your tax-exempt request. Why is that the obligation of the woman from Iowa? They so screw it up at the IRS in Cincinnati and Washington that now the lady from Iowa's got to come in before the House Ways and Means Committee and say, this is the way it needs to be done. I mean, how dare he put the burden on her?
I don't feel it was that way. I feel it was, I took it more rhetorically. Because if you're saying, look, the responsibility given by Congress to the IRS to determine who does and does not deserve tax-exempt status, and as he rightly pointed out, there is that fine line. I mean, please, the Tea Party isn't, as an example, political. The sin, we know what the sin is, but any group, left or right, that is applying for this tax-exempt status, as Americans and as a taxpayer, I want them, left and right, to be scrutinized. Some of these organizations should not be given tax-exempt status because they are truly political in nature, and that is against what the Supreme Court stated could be allowed under Title 18. So I think it's rhetorical, and I think it is accurate. You can't expect to apply for this status and not have any scrutiny by the IRS.
But that's not what they were arguing.
Nobody suggested.
They weren't arguing. These witnesses did not say we shouldn't have had any scrutiny. They were talking about, give us the list of your donors. Tell us anybody who may run for office in the future, all of which is not, that's not allowed. That's not okay.
That is wrong, and that's no dispute by me and many on my side.
When there, this is just an ongoing effort to obscure the facts of the case here. The facts of the case are that conservative groups were targeted by keyword on the lead up to the presidential election in an obvious effort on someone's part to disrupt the political activities of grassroots organizations that would contribute to the election of Mitt Romney. Any questions?
All right, I got to go. Good debate.